Sit down. I am about to tell you an incredible story.
The water wouldn't go down. That's how it all started. With backed up shower water and my wife Lena's hair floating like seaweed around my ankles at 6 in the morning. "Nick, can you please fix this?" Lena called from the bedroom, her voice carrying that particular tone she'd developed lately, the one that made everything sound like my fault. "I have an early class at the gym." Of course she did. Lena Palmer, fitness instructor extraordinaire, had been having a lot of early classes lately. And late classes and weekend workshops. For someone who'd been teaching aerobics for 8 years, she'd suddenly become very dedicated to professional development. I stood there in our master bathroom, watching the murky water refuse to drain, and felt something cold settle in my stomach. It wasn't just the water that had stopped flowing in our house. "I'll call Mike's Plumbing," I shouted back, grabbing a towel. As a building inspector for the city, I knew when a problem was beyond a plunger and some liquid drain cleaner. Mike Kowalski arrived 2 hours later with his camera equipment and that perpetually cheerful attitude that made him popular with homeowners. I'd worked with Mike on dozens of construction sites over the years. He was thorough, honest, and had never once looked at me the way he was looking at me now. "So, Nick, who uses this shower regularly?" Mike asked, threading his fiber optic camera down the drain. "Just Lena mostly. I usually use the guest bathroom downstairs." I leaned against the doorframe watching him work. "Why?" Mike's face went pale as he stared at his monitor. The cheerful whistle he'd been humming stopped abruptly. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "What is it?" Mike turned the monitor toward me. There, wedged deep in the pipe among a tangle of hair and soap scum, was a small metal object. Even through the grainy camera feed, I could make out engraved letters. "CR. Sir," Mike said quietly, his voice completely different now. "You need to see this." He worked for another 10 minutes with his retrieval tools, finally extracting the object. It was a gym locker key, small and silver, with CR engraved in neat block letters. Below that, in the smaller text, Platinum Fitness. That was Chad Rourke's gym, the one where Lena had started teaching classes 6 months ago. I held the key in my palm, feeling its weight. Such a small thing to destroy a marriage. My hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. Instead, I felt perfectly calm, like the moment right before you realize you're about to be in a car accident. "Nick," Mike said, packing up his equipment with unusual speed, "I think you should leave, today. I'm serious, man." "Why?" "Because I've seen this before. The hair, the other things in that pipe. Your wife's not just cheating, Nick. She's been bringing him here, to your house, to your shower." The cold in my stomach spread to my chest. "How can you tell?" Mike looked uncomfortable. "The hair's not all hers, buddy, and there's evidence, DNA evidence, if you know what I mean." I knew what he meant. After Mike left, I sat on our bed, and stared at Chad Rourke's locker key. Lena was at the gym, probably with Chad right now, probably laughing about how stupid her husband was. How oblivious. But I wasn't oblivious anymore. I packed a bag methodically, taking only what I needed. Then I left Lena a note on her pillow. "Ask Chad for his key back. Nick." As I loaded my truck, our neighbor, Mrs. Arnold, appeared on her porch like she'd been waiting for this moment her entire 73 years of life. "I always knew she was a snake," she called out, not bothering with pleasantries. "The way she'd sneak that boy in here when you were at work. Shameless." "How long?" I asked. 4 months, maybe 5. Real pretty boy, drives that flashy red car, always parked it behind the garage where you couldn't see from the street. 4 months. While I'd been working late, inspecting buildings, making sure other people's homes were safe and sound, Chad Rourke had been making himself comfortable in mine. I drove to my brother Marty's house with Chad's locker key burning a hole in my pocket, and a plan already forming in my mind. Lena thought I was stupid. Chad thought I was a pushover. They were both about to learn how wrong they were. Marty's house smelled like beer and disappointment, which was perfect for my mood. My brother had been a cop for 15 years before a drunk driver ended both his career and his marriage. Now he spent his days doing private security, and his nights perfecting his cynical worldview. "So she's been playing house with some musclehead," Marty said after I'd explained everything. He examined Chad's locker key like it was evidence in a homicide case. "What do you want to do about it?" "I want to destroy them both." Marty grinned. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Now you're talking my language. But we do this smart, Nick. Legal. We gather evidence, document everything, and then we ruin their lives the right way." What do you mean? I mean, we turn Lena and her boyfriend into a cautionary tale. By the time we're done, they'll be the laughingstock of this entire town. We started that afternoon. Marty had kept some of his surveillance equipment from his cop days, and he walked me through the basics of evidence gathering. Phone records, credit card statements, social media monitoring, all perfectly legal if you knew what you were doing. First rule, Marty said, setting up a laptop, never do anything that could get you arrested. Revenge is a dish best served cold and completely within the bounds of the law. The phone records were enlightening. Lena had been texting someone with Chad's number approximately 40 times a day for the past 4 months. The credit card statements showed lunches at expensive restaurants, purchases at Victoria's Secret, and hotel charges on days when she'd told me she was visiting her sister. But it was the social media that really opened my eyes. Chad Rourke was exactly what I'd expected. 32 years old, real estate agent, the kind of guy who posted shirtless gym selfies and inspirational quotes about success. His Instagram was a monument to narcissism, full of expensive cars, fancy dinners, and photos with various women, including several recent photos with my wife. They weren't hiding it very well. There was Lena at some upscale restaurant, laughing at something off camera. Lena at a hotel pool in a bikini I'd never seen before. Lena in Chad's red Corvette, wearing sunglasses and looking like she didn't have a care in the world. "Look at this," Marty said, pointing to a photo from 2 weeks ago. "That's the Riverside Hotel, $150 a night. And look at the timestamp, 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday." Tuesday? The day Lena had told me she was helping her mother with grocery shopping. My phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Where are you? Your note doesn't make sense." I showed Marty the message. He laughed. "She's panicking. Probably called Chad, told him about the key. They're scrambling right now, trying to figure out how much you know." Should I respond? Not yet. Let them sweat. Fear makes people stupid, and we want them making mistakes. That evening, we drove to Platinum Fitness. Chad's red Corvette was parked right in front, like he owned the place. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, we could see Lena teaching a step aerobics class. She looked beautiful, confident, completely at ease. She also kept glancing toward the back of the gym, where Chad was working out with his business partner, Brett Morrison. Even from the parking lot, I could see the way she smiled at him. "You know what the worst part is?" I said to Marty. "What?" "She looks happy. Happier than she's looked with me in years. That's because she thinks she's getting away with it. Wait until she realizes she's not." We followed them after the gym closed. Chad and Lena went to a bar called the Floodgate, a dive bar on the wrong side of town where nobody would recognize them. They sat in a back booth, heads close together, Lena's hand on Chad's arm. "They're probably planning their next move," Marty said. "Figuring out how to handle you. Let them plan. I've got plans of my own." The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day at the courthouse researching divorce law. Illinois was a no-fault state, but infidelity could still affect property division and spousal support, especially if one party could prove the affair had been going on in the marital home. Thank God for Mike's plumbing report. I also made an appointment with Wendy Chen, the best divorce attorney in the county. She was expensive, ruthless, and had a reputation for destroying unfaithful spouses in court. "Bring me everything," she said when I called. "Photos, receipts, phone records, witness statements. I want enough evidence to bury them both." Lena called 6 times that day. I didn't answer. She left increasingly frantic voicemails. "Nick, please call me back. I don't understand what's happening. Nick, whatever you think you know, you're wrong. We need to talk. Nick, I'm scared. Please come home." The last one almost got to me. Almost. Then Marty showed me the photos he'd taken that afternoon. Chad's Corvette parked behind our garage, just like Mrs. Arnold had said. Lena letting him into our house through the back door. The two of them visible through our bedroom window. Our bedroom, our bed, our shower. I deleted Lena's voicemails without listening to the rest. Chad Rourke worked at Morrison and Associates Real Estate, a mid-level firm that specialized in suburban homes and commercial properties. Their office was in a glass building downtown, the kind of place that screamed success but whispered debt. I knew this because I'd spent 3 days watching him. Chad had a routine. Coffee at Starbucks at 7:30, gym at lunch, happy hour at various upscale bars depending on the day. He drove his Corvette like he was auditioning for a car commercial, and he treated everyone around him like supporting characters in his personal movie. He was also careless. Wednesday morning, I watched him park in the gym lot and stride inside like he owned the world. He left his car unlocked, probably figured nobody would mess with a Corvette in broad daylight. He was wrong. I didn't damage anything. That would have been illegal, and Marty had drilled the importance of staying within the law into my head. Instead, I did something much more creative. I loosened the lug nuts on his front passenger wheel. Not enough to cause an accident. I wasn't trying to eliminate anyone. Just enough to create a problem at the worst possible moment. Then I waited. Chad emerged from the gym 2 hours later, sweaty and smug, probably thinking about his afternoon plans with my wife. He got in his car, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot with his usual dramatic flair. He made it 3 blocks before the wheel came off. I was following at a safe distance when it happened. The Corvette lurched to the right, sparks flying as the rim scraped against asphalt. Chad managed to pull over without hitting anything, but his beautiful red car was now sitting on the side of the road like a wounded animal. I drove past slowly, savoring the sight of Chad standing next to his disabled Corvette, cell phone pressed to his ear, looking like his world had just collapsed. Because it had. And this was just the beginning. That afternoon, I went to the Floodgate. It was the kind of bar where construction workers and mechanics went to forget about their problems, and where gossip flowed as freely as the beer. "You hear about that real estate guy?" said Tommy Kowalski, Mike's cousin. "The one with the fancy car?" "What about him?" I asked, playing dumb. "Wheel fell clean off his Corvette this morning, right in front of the elementary school. Kids were pointing and laughing." The bartender, a weathered woman named Rose, snorted. "Serves him right. That boy's been bragging in here about some married woman he's been seeing. Real classy stuff, talking about how her husband's too stupid to catch on." My hand tightened around my beer bottle. "What married woman?" "Some fitness instructor. Real pretty, according to him. Says she's got a boring husband who works for the city." The entire bar was listening now. Rose had a captive audience, and she was enjoying it. "Chad, that's his name. He was in here last weekend, buying drinks for everyone, talking about how he's got this woman wrapped around his finger. Said she even gave him a key to her house so he could come and go as he pleased." "No kidding," I said. "Yep. Real piece of work, that one. Bragging about breaking up a marriage like it's some kind of achievement." I finished my beer and left a generous tip. By the time I walked out, half the bar was discussing Chad Rourke and his mystery married woman. In a town this size, it wouldn't take long for people to connect the dots. That evening, Lena finally came to Marty's house. She looked terrible. Red eyes, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and a ratty t-shirt I hadn't seen in years. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the photos Marty had taken of her and Chad in our bedroom. "Nick, please," she said when I opened the door. "We need to talk." "About what? About us? About this misunderstanding?" "Misunderstanding?" I held up Chad's locker key. "You mean this misunderstanding?" Lena's face went white. "Where did you get that?" "Your boyfriend lost it, in our shower drain, along with some other interesting evidence." She started crying then, the kind of desperate tears that might have worked on me 6 months ago before I knew what she really was. "Nick, I can explain everything. I'm sure you can. You always were good with stories. It's not what you think." "Really?" "Because I think you've been sleeping with Chad Rourke in our house, in our bed, for the past 4 months. I think you've been lying to me every single day, making me feel like I was going crazy for suspecting something was wrong. I think you've been planning to leave me, but wanted to have your fun first." Lena's tears stopped. Her face hardened into an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, almost cruel. "You don't understand," she said. "Chad makes me feel alive. You make me feel like I'm dying." There it was. The truth, finally. "Well," I said, "now you're free to feel as alive as you want. Just not in my house and not with my money. You can't just throw me out. I have rights." "Yes, you do. Talk to your lawyer about them. I'm sure Chad can recommend someone." I started to close the door, but Lena grabbed it. "This isn't over, Nick. You can't just destroy my life because you're jealous." "I'm not destroying your life, Lena. You already did that. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it." The next morning brought the first sign that my plan was working. Jill Martinez, Lena's best friend and fellow fitness instructor, was waiting by my truck when I left Marty's house. Jill was everything Lena wasn't. Short, dark-haired, and aggressive in a way that made men uncomfortable. She'd never liked me, and the feeling was mutual. "You need to stop this," she said without preamble. "Stop what?" Whatever you're doing to Chad, Lena's a mess and it's affecting her work. Lena's personal life is her responsibility. Look, Nick, I get it. You're hurt, but destroying Chad's car isn't going to win her back. I almost laughed. Win her back? Jill, I don't want her back. I want her gone. You don't mean that. Try me. Jill stepped closer, trying to intimidate me. It might have worked if I hadn't spent the last week learning exactly how low my wife and her friends were willing to go. If you keep maltreating Chad, we'll call the police. Good luck proving I did anything to his car. Wheels fall off sometimes, especially when people don't maintain their vehicles properly. Everyone knows it was you. Knowing and proving are two different things. Ask your friend Chad about that. Jill's face flushed red. You're pathetic, Nick. No wonder Lena found someone better. Better? I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the photos Marty had taken. Chad and Lena in our driveway, his hands all over her. You mean this guy? The one who brags about sleeping with married women? Real upgrade. Jill's expression changed when she saw the photo. For the first time, she looked uncertain. You've been following them? I've been protecting my interests. There's a difference. This is sick. What's sick is my wife bringing her boyfriend into my house and thinking I'm too stupid to notice. I got in my truck and drove away, leaving Jill standing in the driveway. In my rearview mirror, I could see her on her phone, probably calling Lena or Chad or both. Let them panic. Panic led to mistakes, and mistakes led to opportunities. That afternoon, I had my first meeting with Wendy Chen. Her office was everything I'd expected. Expensive furniture, law books, and an atmosphere that suggested she ate opposing counsel for breakfast. Wendy was in her 40s, Asian American, and had the kind of presence that made you sit up straight without being told. She reviewed my evidence with the cold efficiency of a surgeon examining an X-ray. This is good, she said after an hour. Very good. The plumbing report alone establishes infidelity in the marital home. The photos and phone records support a pattern of deception. The credit card statements show she was using marital funds to support the affair. What does that mean for the divorce? It means she gets nothing. Illinois may be a no-fault state, but judges still don't like cheaters, especially cheaters who flaunt it. And spousal support? What spousal support? She's employed, she's healthy, and she's been conducting an affair. No judge in this county would award her a dime. For the first time in a week, I smiled. Really smiled. There is one thing, Wendy continued. Your wife will probably try to claim you've been maltreating her and her friend. You need to be very careful about that. I haven't done anything illegal. I know, but the appearance of maltreatment could hurt us in court. Document everything, stay within the law, and let me handle the legal strategy. What about Chad? What about him? Can we go after him too? Wendy's smile was carnivory. Alienation of affection is still actionable in Illinois under certain circumstances. If we can prove he knowingly interfered with your marriage, we might be able to recover damages. How much? Depends on how good our case is and how much he's worth. That evening, Marty and I did more research on Chad Rourke. His real estate license was current, but his sales record was mediocre. The Corvette was leased, not owned. His apartment was expensive, but not extravagant. He was living paycheck to paycheck, trying to maintain an image he couldn't afford. Perfect. Guy's leveraged to the hilt, Marty said, scrolling through public records. One major lawsuit, and he's bankrupt. Can we make that happen? Maybe. Depends on how stupid he gets. We didn't have to wait long. The next morning, Chad called me directly. We need to talk, he said when I answered. About what? About Lena. About this situation. What situation? Look, man, I know you're upset, but Lena and we're in love. This isn't some casual thing. I almost laughed. In love? Is that what you call it? She's going to leave you anyway. You can make this easy or hard, but the result's going to be the same. You think so? I know so. Lena deserves better than some boring city inspector who can't satisfy her. There it was, the arrogance I'd been waiting for. Chad, I said, you have no idea what you've started. What's that supposed to mean? It means you picked the wrong man's wife to screw around with. I hung up and immediately called Wendy. I need to add a maltreatment claim to our lawsuit. What happened? I played her the recording I'd made of Chad's call. In Illinois, only one party needed to consent to record a conversation. Oh, this is beautiful, Wendy said. Absolutely beautiful. He just handed us everything we need. The annual Riverside Elementary School Spring Carnival was the kind of wholesome community event that brought out the best in people. Families, local businesses, and civic organizations all came together to celebrate the end of the school year and raise money for new playground equipment. It was also the perfect venue for what I had planned. Lena would be there. She volunteered every year, running the face painting booth with the other gym instructors. Chad would probably show up too, since he'd been inserting himself into every aspect of my wife's life. I arrived early and set up my own booth. As a city building inspector, I'd been asked to do a home safety tips display for parents. It was boring, educational, and gave me the perfect cover for what I was really there to do. Marty positioned himself near the parking area with a camera. Mrs. Arnold, who had become an enthusiastic ally in my campaign against Lena, stationed herself at the information table where she could observe and report on everything. "This is going to be good," Marty said through the earpiece he'd given me. "Half the town's here." Lena arrived at noon, looking nervous. She'd been staying at Jill's house since our confrontation, and the stress was showing. Her usual perfect appearance was slightly off makeup, a little too heavy, smile a little too bright. Chad showed up 20 minutes later, parking his replacement rental car, a modest sedan that must have hurt his ego, near the back of the lot. He tried to look casual as he wandered through the carnival, but I could see him scanning the crowd for me. "Target acquired," Marty's voice crackled in my ear. "He's heading for the face painting booth." I watched from my position as Chad approached Lena. She looked panicked when she saw him, glancing around nervously. They had a brief, intense conversation that ended with Lena shaking her head and Chad walking away looking frustrated. Perfect. They were already on edge. At 2 o'clock, I made my move. The carnival had a small stage where local musicians and school groups performed throughout the day. I'd arranged to give a brief presentation about home safety smoke detectors, carbon monoxide alarms, basic maintenance tips, but I had a different kind of safety in mind. "Good afternoon, everyone," I said into the microphone. "I'm Nick Palmer, building inspector for the city. I want to talk to you today about protecting your most valuable investment, your home." The crowd was polite but distracted. Parents were watching their kids, volunteers were managing booths, and most people were only half listening. "Home security isn't just about locks and alarms," I continued. "It's about knowing who has access to your property, who has keys, who knows your routines, who might be coming and going when you're not there." Now I had their attention. In the back of the crowd, I could see Lena's face going pale. "For example," I said, holding up a familiar silver key. "This is a gym locker key. I found it in my shower drain last week. It belongs to someone who's been using my house without permission." The crowd was fully engaged now. Nothing got people's attention like the promise of drama. "The key belongs to Chad Rourke, a local real estate agent who's been having an affair with my wife." Gasps rippled through the audience. I saw Lena push through the crowd, trying to reach the stage, but Mrs. Arnold and several other women blocked her path. "Now, I'm not telling you this to embarrass anyone," I continued, enjoying the shocked faces in front of me. "I'm telling you this as a cautionary tale. Check your drains, folks. You never know what you might find." Chad appeared at the edge of the crowd, his face red with rage. He started pushing toward the stage, but Marty intercepted him. "The good news is," I said, "I've learned a valuable lesson about home security. I've changed all my locks, installed security cameras, and hired an excellent divorce attorney. Sometimes the best home improvement is removing unwanted pests." The crowd erupted in nervous laughter and excited chatter. I could see people pulling out their phones, already spreading the story across social media. "Thank you for your attention," I said. "And remember, always check your references before letting anyone into your home." I stepped down from the stage into chaos. Lena was crying, surrounded by concerned friends who were asking questions she couldn't answer. Chad was being restrained by Marty and 2 other men, shouting threats that everyone could hear. "You're crazy," Chad yelled. "I'll sue you for slander." "Truth is, an absolute defense against slander," I called back. "Ask your lawyer." The crowd was eating it up. Nothing this exciting had happened at the Spring Carnival in decades. People were taking photos, recording videos, and already posting everything online. Mrs. Arnold appeared at my elbow, grinning like she'd won the lottery. "That was beautiful, dear," she said. "Just beautiful. That little tramp got exactly what she deserved." As I packed up my booth, I watched Lena and Chad try to salvage the situation. Lena was attempting to explain herself to her fellow volunteers, but the damage was done. Chad was arguing with anyone who would listen, insisting the whole thing was a misunderstanding. But the court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict. By evening, the story would be all over town. By tomorrow, it would be all over social media. Lena Palmer and Chad Rourke were now officially the most notorious couple in Riverside, and I was just getting started. The fallout from the carnival incident was swift and brutal. By Monday morning, the story had spread throughout the entire county. Local news picked it up as a human interest piece. Building inspector exposes wife's affair at school carnival, and it went viral on social media. Lena was suspended from her position at Platinum Fitness pending an investigation into her conduct unbecoming of a professional instructor. The gym's management, faced with angry members and negative publicity, decided she was more trouble than she was worth. Chad's real estate license came under review by the state board after several complaints about his unprofessional behavior. His boss at Morrison & Associates was less diplomatic. Chad was fired immediately to protect the firm's reputation, but the best part was watching them turn on each other. "She's blaming you for everything," Marty reported after spending an evening at the floodgate listening to gossip. "Telling everyone that you seduced her, that she was vulnerable and you took advantage. And Chad? He's saying she was the aggressor. Claims she threw herself at him, begged him to sleep with her, promised to leave you for him." It was exactly what I'd hoped for. Under pressure, their great love affair was crumbling into mutual recrimination and blame. The legal proceedings moved quickly once Wendy filed the divorce papers. Lena hired a lawyer, a young, inexperienced attorney who was clearly in over his head. Chad couldn't afford legal representation and was trying to represent himself in the alienation of affection lawsuit. "This is almost too easy," Wendy said during one of our strategy sessions. "They've made every possible mistake. Your wife's attorney is advising her to fight for spousal support and half the marital assets, which is laughable given the evidence we have, and Mr. Rourke keeps making public statements that we can use against him in court." "What kind of statements?" "He gave an interview to the local paper claiming he's the sufferer of a vindictive husband's maltreatment campaign. He also posted a long rant on Facebook about how some people can't handle the truth about their failed marriages." I had to admire Chad's ability to make everything worse for himself. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late June. I arrived at the courthouse with Wendy, feeling more confident than I had in months. We had evidence, witnesses, and the law on our side. Lena was already there with her lawyer, looking like she'd aged 5 years in the past month. Chad sat alone at a separate table, shuffling through a stack of papers and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Judge Patricia Morrison, no relation to Chad's former boss, was a stern woman in her 60s with a reputation for no-nonsense rulings. She reviewed our evidence with the same cold efficiency that Wendy had shown in her office. "Mrs. Palmer," the judge said, "you're requesting spousal support and an equal division of marital assets. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Lena's lawyer replied. "My client contributed equally to the marriage and deserves fair compensation." Judge Morrison looked at the photos Wendy had submitted. "These photos show your client engaged in infidelity in the marital home, correct?" "Your Honor, my client's personal relationships don't affect her legal rights." "Actually, they do." The judge's voice was ice cold. "Illinois law allows courts to consider marital misconduct when determining property division and spousal support. Your client conducted a months-long affair in her husband's house, using marital funds to support her relationship with another man. That absolutely affects her legal rights." Lena started crying. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. "Furthermore," Judge Morrison continued, "the evidence suggests your client gave her paramour access to the marital home without her husband's knowledge or consent. That's not just infidelity. It's a violation of her husband's reasonable expectation of privacy and security in his own home." The judge turned to Chad. "Mr. Rourke, you're representing yourself in the alienation of affection claim?" "Yes, ma'am. Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor." "Do you deny having sexual relations with Mrs. Palmer while she was married to the plaintiff?" Chad's face turned red. "No, Your Honor, but do you deny that these relations took place in the plaintiff's home?" "No, but she invited me." "Mr. Rourke, the law doesn't care who initiated the relationship. What matters is that you knowingly interfered with a marriage, and you did so in a way that caused significant emotional and financial damage to the plaintiff." The hearing lasted 2 hours. When it was over, Lena had been awarded nothing. No spousal support, no share of the house, no claim to my pension or savings. Chad was facing a judgment of $50,000 in damages, plus court costs and attorney fees. "But I don't have $50,000, Chad protested. "Then you'll need to figure out how to get it," Judge Morrison replied. Wage garnishment, asset seizure, payment plan, that's between you and the plaintiff's attorney. Outside the courthouse, Lena made one last attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. Nick, please, she said, grabbing my arm. We can work this out. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 10 years ago. But she was also a stranger, someone who'd been living a lie so completely that I wondered if I'd ever really known her at all. Lena, I said gently, the only mistake you made was getting caught. That's not true. I love you. I've always loved you. No, you loved the security I provided. You loved having a stable home and a reliable husband, while you played around with someone more exciting. Chad means nothing to me. He never did. I glanced over at Chad, who was standing by his rental car looking defeated and alone. You might want to tell him that, though I don't think he'll be much comfort to you now that he's broke. Please, Nick, don't do this. I'm not doing anything, Lena. This is what you chose when you decided to bring Chad into our house, into our bed, into our life. You made your choice. Now, you get to live with it. 6 months later, I was living in a new house across town, a modest ranch that I'd bought with the settlement money from Chad's alienation of affection judgment. It wasn't as big as the house I'd shared with Lena, but it was mine, completely and totally mine. Lena had moved back in with her parents after losing her job and her apartment. The last I'd heard, she was working at a chain gym in the next county, teaching classes for half what she'd made at Platinum Fitness. Her social media accounts had gone dark after months of maltreatment from people who'd seen the carnival video. Chad had declared bankruptcy, but the judgment against him wasn't dischargeable. He'd be paying me for the next 10 years, assuming he could find steady work. His real estate license had been suspended, and his reputation in town was permanently destroyed. But the story wasn't quite over. On a cold Saturday morning in December, I was finishing my coffee when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Jill Martinez standing on my porch, looking nervous and uncomfortable. Nick, she said, we need to talk. About what? About Lena and Chad and what really happened? I let her in, curious despite myself. Jill had been Lena's most loyal defender throughout the divorce proceedings. Whatever had brought her to my door must have been serious. Lena didn't tell you everything, Jill said once we were seated in my living room. I'm sure she didn't. What's your point? The affair with Chad, it wasn't her first. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What do you mean? She's been cheating on you for years, Nick. Chad was just the most recent. There was Marcus, the personal trainer, and David, the massage therapist, and Tom from the country club. The names hit me like physical blows. I remembered all of them, men who'd been friendly to me, who'd shaken my hand and smiled while they were sleeping with my wife. Why are you telling me this now? Jill looked ashamed. Because she's trying to get back together with you. She's been asking mutual friends to put in a good word, saying she's changed, that losing you made her realize what she had. And you don't think she's changed? I know she hasn't. She's been sleeping with her new boss at the gym, married guy with 3 kids. She's planning to break up his marriage just like she broke up yours. I stared at Jill, processing this information. Why should I believe you? Because I'm tired of covering for her. I'm tired of watching her destroy people's lives and feeling like I'm partly responsible. Jill pulled out her phone and showed me a series of text messages. Lena bragging about her new conquest. Photos of her with a man I didn't recognize. Plans for secret meetings and elaborate lies to cover their tracks. She's exactly the same as she always was, Jill said. The only thing that's changed is that she's more careful about hiding it. After Jill left, I sat in my living room for a long time, thinking about everything she'd told me. Part of me was angry that Lena's betrayal had been even worse than I'd known. But mostly, I felt relieved. For months, I'd been second-guessing myself, wondering if I'd been too harsh, if I should have tried to work things out. Now I knew the truth. Lena wasn't capable of change. She was a carnivore who used love as a weapon, and I'd been lucky to escape when I did. I picked up my phone and called Wendy. I need you to do something for me, I said when she answered. What's that? I want you to contact the wife of Lena's new boyfriend. She deserves to know what she's dealing with. Nick, are you sure? Getting involved in someone else's marriage could backfire. I'm not getting involved. I'm just sharing information. What she does with it is her choice. Wendy was quiet for a moment. All right, send me what you have. 2 weeks later, the local paper ran another story about Lena Palmer. This time, she was being sued for alienation of affection by the wife of her latest sufferer. The woman had hired Wendy as her attorney, and they were seeking damages of $100,000. The story included quotes from several of Lena's previous sufferers, men whose marriages she'd helped destroy, women whose husbands she'd seduced, a pattern of carnivory behavior spanning nearly a decade. I read the article twice, then folded the paper and threw it away. Lena Palmer was no longer my problem. She was everyone else's cautionary tale. That evening, I had dinner with a woman named Sarah Mitchell, a teacher I'd met at a community volunteer event. She was kind, honest, and refreshingly direct about what she wanted from life. We'd been seeing each other for 2 months, taking things slow, building something real. You seem different tonight, Sarah said as we walked to her car after dinner. Happier. I am happier. I feel like I finally closed the book on a very ugly chapter of my life. The divorce? Everything that led up to it. Everything that came after, all of it. Sarah smiled. Good. You deserve to be happy, Nick. You deserve someone who appreciates what they have. As I drove home that night, I thought about the man I'd been a year ago. Naive, trusting, willfully blind to what was happening in his own house. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder but wiser. Someone who understood that trust had to be earned and that love without respect was just manipulation. I'd lost a wife, a house, and a decade of my life. But I'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge of who I really was when everything was stripped away. I was someone who fought back, someone who didn't accept betrayal quietly, someone who made sure that actions had consequences. Lena had taught me that lesson, though not in the way she'd intended. She'd shown me that some people were incapable of love, only of taking what they wanted and moving on to the next sufferer. But she'd also shown me that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, strong enough to walk away, strong enough to fight back, strong enough to rebuild my life from the ground up. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw Mrs. Arnold waving from her porch next door. She'd moved to a retirement community near my new house, claiming she needed to keep an eye on me. Really, I think she just enjoyed having a front row seat to whatever drama life might bring. Evening, Nick, she called out. How was your date? It was good, Mrs. Arnold, really good. That's wonderful, dear. You deserve some happiness after everything that woman put you through. I waved goodnight and went inside, feeling more at peace than I had in years. The house was quiet, clean, and completely mine. No secrets, no lies, no unwelcome surprises waiting in the shower drain. Just the way I liked it. 3 months later, I married Sarah Mitchell in a small ceremony at the courthouse. Mrs. Arnold was our witness, and Marty was my best man. Wendy handled the prenuptial agreement, not because I didn't trust Sarah, but because I'd learned the value of protecting what mattered to me. The local paper ran a small announcement in the wedding section. 2 days later, I received a text from an unknown number. Congratulations. I hope she makes you happy. L. I deleted the message without responding and blocked the number. Lena Palmer was my past. Sarah Mitchell Palmer was my future. And for the first time in years, the future looked bright.